Well, unbelievable video is coming out of Russia today after a meteorite streaked across the morning sky before crashing into a city of Chelyabinsk, Russia, that is. Over 900 people were injured and some 3,000 buildings were also damaged from the tremendous shock wave this 10-ton behemoth set off upon impact. Now, to give you an idea of the region, Chelyabinsk is a mountainous city that is located about 1,000 miles east of Moscow and has some 1.1 million residents. The meteor hit around 9:20 a.m. local time and left a 15-foot hole in an icy lake just west of the city. For more, RT International correspondent Lizzie France joined me earlier. I started off by asking her what's the latest news coming out of Russia and whether there were any deaths.
No, it's not reported that there are any deaths at this point. However, 1,200 people have reportedly sought medical attention. 200 of them are children. Now, when those bright flashes of light lit up the sky in Chelyabinsk, bystanders say that what they heard was something that reminded them of an earthquake, also with thunder happening at the exact same time, and the force of the blast pushed through windows and pushed people across their offices. It was very shocking. People didn't know if it was the end of the world, if it was a meteorite hitting, if it was a bomb. People were very, very frightened, as you can imagine. And so there have been a lot of injuries because of this. Chelyabinsk is a mid-sized city. At least 3,000 buildings were ruined when this actually happened. Now, the impact sites in the area, reportedly there are 3 of them, and at this point they've been roped off and are being investigated for radiation.
So let's talk about the magnitude of the damage. You kind of mentioned it a little bit earlier, but can you give us a sense of the magnitude of what exactly has been destroyed and how much?
Yeah, well, let's talk about the meteorite itself. According to the Russian Academy of Scientists, it is estimated that it is about 10 tons and it was traveling around 30 to 45,000 miles per hour when it made impact. Now, it completely gutted a zinc factory in the area, and then there are 2 other sites just west of Chelyabinsk that are being investigated. One of them is a ice-covered lake. At this point, as I said earlier, authorities claim that 3,000 buildings have been ruined either by collapsed roofs or by all of the windows just being shattered. On top of that, when initial impact was made this morning, cell phone coverage was down, and then, of course, natural gas lines had to be shut off in case of an explosion. So a state of emergency was temporarily declared, and then, of course, hospitals were put on high alert, and emergency services were brought in by the thousands of people just to stabilize the situation because, as you can imagine, no one really knew at that point what had taken place.
Absolutely. I can imagine there is a lot of chaos and questions. So what's been the reaction of the people on the ground? I'm hearing that people were actually relieved that it was a meteor hit and not something else. Why is that?
Yeah, if you can imagine, you've got to really look at the area this has taken place in. This is an old nuclear test facility. In fact, during the Soviet era, it was a sort of a nuclear playground where scientists would test nuclear products. And at this point, it's actually got 7 nuclear fuel sites in this area. So when people heard this explosion and saw this bright flash of light, their immediate fear for many of them, they say, was that there was a man-made nuclear disaster. In fact, this area went through 2 of those disasters, one in the 50s, one in the 60s. So one of the immediate concerns, aside from a UFO or a bomb, was that this was another nuclear disaster. And you can imagine if those fears were realized, what kind of a situation they'd be dealing with at this point. For now, it's a zinc factory knocked out, smashed windows, some injuries, but no deaths so far.
Now, Lindsay, as I understand it, it's definitely not the first time that a meteor has struck this region. It's not even the second or the third time. Are there any ideas floating around about why this area seems to be such a magnet for meteors?
You know, especially right now, it seems to be such a hot topic with scientists because the area, like you say, does seem to be a magnet for this sort of thing. If you go back to 1908 with the Tunguska meteorite that hit and decimated 2,000 square kilometers of forest in Siberia, and then there have been at least 4 major hits in Siberia and in the far, far east of Russia since then. And it's a very odd phenomenon, and it's something scientists are it's a very hot topic right now, and especially even with people who aren't scientists. Why is this happening so much? And it's something very shocking. Although the thing that's very interesting also in is all those crashes, there have never been one recorded death or one injury, except for what took place today. The only recorded injury in a meteorite crash happens to have taken place in Alabama in 1950s when a woman was sleeping on her couch. A meteorite crashed through a roof, hit her on the arm. That's the only recorded injury, except for today in Chelyabinsk. But hopefully we won't lose anybody, and hopefully they'll figure out why Siberia seems to be such a magnet for these meteorites.
And I'm sure you are going to be keeping on the story as well as all of our team over in RT Moscow. RT International correspondent Lindsay France, thank you so much for weighing in on this topic.